Hey, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Frank About Health. As you all recall, last week I was celebrating my second anniversary on TalkRadio.nyc. I'm here again, back where it all began when I was talking on the network about epilepsy 2 years ago. And it's again with me and Jeff Demitrack, where we're going to talk with our special guest today, Anne Marie O'Connor from Canada, where she will be talking about her life with managing epilepsy now that she is seizure free. That is one of the unique aspects of this particular episode because, as everyone knows, Jeff and I have been here for the last several months talking about people living with epilepsy, writing a book about it, trying to live with the stigmas about it, understanding alternative treatments, look at the mental health impacts, probably see how narcissism can impact an individual who suffers from seizures. But this is the first time we're actually talking with someone who no longer has seizures. Simultaneously, she's written several books on her experience with living with epilepsy, as well as you'll hear during the show about her experience having a surgical procedure that may or may not have been the reason why, to this day, she no longer suffers from seizures. But before we have our discussion and introductions, I want to first welcome our new viewers from twitch.tv, in addition to our ongoing audience on Facebook Live, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter, and of course, our audio stream audience on talkradio.nyc. And I will issue all of you my typical disclaimer, which is any of the information that you hear on today's show from myself, from Anne Marie, or Jeffrey is not to be taken as medical advice or anything seriously until you decide that whatever you learn from this show might be of use to you, especially if you have a neurologist or a mental health professional or a primary care physician that is taking care of your medicine regimens or other kinds of treatment protocols. You would like to therefore have a discussion based on what you hear on the show to see if maybe what worked for Anne, Jeff, or myself could work for you. So that all being said, please take this information as food for thought and for consideration that you should never change any of your ongoing treatment until you consult with your doctors. That all being said, Anne Marie, welcome to Frank About Health.
Yeah, welcome, Anne Marie.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we're looking forward to your story. Yeah. So. yeah.
Exactly.
And actually, Susanna was seizure free. We did have someone else that on that didn't have seizures and had a therapy. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
That's exactly. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So Anne Marie, let's go into the overview of what we've done here on Frank About Health when it comes to the topic of epilepsy. Originally, when I began the show 2 years ago, well, actually, I began it, as I said, in 2016 when we were not on the Zoom platform at that time. I began it as trying to really erase the stigmas of epilepsy. Why? Because it was always known that once you had it, it was never solved or resolved, as they say. It was something that you had to live with, either with the appropriate medications or whatever alternative treatments you would have, like cannabis, for example, or maybe even just working with different types of interventions, whether it would be a vagus nerve stimulator or a surgical procedure, or maybe try to figure out if it was provoked by mental health issues. Now, in your case, it sounds like you're going to be sharing about a unique case of having it totally resolved. So I think that being said, why don't you start by sharing the history of when you had your first seizure and then show the progression of how you began to write books on your experience, because I know you have 2 or 3 books out there.
I do, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well,
that's very impressive, Anne Marie. Yeah, so, and one of your books is Let's Talk About Epilepsy. That's inspiring other people to get their stories out.
Well, and I like to think of myself as someone who does inspire. I've been like that since I could talk. So, and I keep going the older I get. But no, it all started for me a long time ago when I was 2. So back in the 70s, my brother woke my parents up one night saying that Anne was making all these funny noises, and I had my first seizure that night. So if he wouldn't have woke them up, I don't think I would be here today, because You know,
Wow.
I was in that seizure. They were calling them convulsions back then in the 70s.
Oh yeah, I mean, when I was first diagnosed, they called them convulsions. I mean, the language has changed. We were talking about this before the show.
Absolutely, it has. And I'm very old school with terms, but it was crazy. That's when it started for me. And put on my first medication, phenobarb. I was having convulsion seizures that first week nonstop. And they don't know why.
And phenobarbital, that's an old medication. That's like one of the first of the medications.
It is. I actually talk about that in my book. And where I used to
they don't even use phenobarbital anymore.
No, but they do at the vet clinics, which is something I did talk. But it's they don't know why the seizures started when I was younger. They just did. I kept having them. I was having grand mals and petite mals. And when I was about 3.5, I had one seizure that I think it probably just lasted too long. And I ended up, my entire right side was paralyzed for a year.
I mean, you must have had status epilepticus, because only status epilepticus would lead to brain damage like that. Or right. I mean, I don't know how much damage you had, but. Yeah.
But again, that's something they did not talk to my parents about. My parents knew nothing back then. You know, back in those
I don't think anybody did. You know, I mean, nobody really even knows now, actually.
No, the first thing was just put her on phenobarb, which they did. And I went about a year. My whole right side was paralyzed. My mom would do therapy with me, like physio at home. And I was super stubborn. I knew I was going to be going to school, but they told my parents that I would never be right-handed. I would have speech problems, and I'd probably be in special needs classes. You can tell today I don't have speech problems. I got in trouble every year for talking in school. And I have played sports since I was 4.5. Once it kind of, how do you say, it went away. I was not paralyzed anymore just before I started kindergarten. And I never had problems. I'm right-handed. I played soccer before I was 5. So they don't know the rhyme or reason for that even happening, but it did. But I continued on my phenobarb through school. I was never in special needs classes. And my seizures started to kind of slow down a bit. But then all of a sudden they'd pick up. There was no, again, rhyme or reason. Why are they doing that? But I went till I was 10 years old having my grand mal, petite mal, and then they stopped. At 10, it was like there was no reason. So by the time before I turned 12, before we moved out to the Wild West here in Alberta, I was off all my pills. And so none of my new friends here going through junior high and high school knew that I even had epilepsy, which was kind of cool for me, right? Because I didn't talk about it. And then I finally moved out when I was 20, and 6 months later, my seizures came back.
So you literally had the incubation period transferring out from juvenile epilepsy to the full-blown epilepsy diagnosis, right?
Yes,
okay.
And it was.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Frank. Because that's actually what happened.
I've never heard it.
You didn't grow out of it.
Yeah,
but that's the thing. As in the 70s, when you were having, primitive medications with toxic symptoms and basically no effective diagnosis, did they at least tell you, aside from the symptomology, as to if you were considered, a patient of Lennox-Gastaut syndrome or of juvenile myoclonic epilepsy or any of those things? Or did they just say, we don't know why you're having them?
We don't know why. My parents were like, we talk more about it now than we did when I had it, which is crazy, right? Because my parents were never educated on it, on anything, like any part of it, even the meds. They didn't understand, what the side effects could be. And believe me, I went through. So when my seizures came back, I was put back on meds, and a lot of them, like Tegretol, Topamax, Keppra. Oh my goodness, don't get me going. But
I mean the side effects of those, I know I'm still on Topamax and Keppra, and really they really get to you. Topamax word finding, and Keppra like this anxiety, constant.
Yes.
There's a lot of stuff, that with those drugs that they don't tell you about.
People don't understand.
I can say this. what is really a shame is because epilepsy really goes back thousands and thousands of years, is that it was always based on the stigma itself. There was no interest until there were medical professionals out there that found a genetic link to epilepsy. Yes. And I can speak firsthand right here at the NYU Langone Health System in New York City. They have a comprehensive epilepsy center where I have been seeing my doctor for the last 30 years. And he was the one that pointed out, after I'd already been suffering from epilepsy since the 80s, that I was genetically based. And I was like, wow. So all of a sudden, that means that there's actual research. And the stigma still lingered because that was a majority of thousands and thousands of years. But in terms of researching the disorder as a neurological disorder, that's only 20 to 25 years in the making.
It seems like it's brand new. Like, just a really quick story. Before I had my surgery, I was visiting family in England, in Liverpool, where my dad's from. And in the museum, there was a whole setup on epilepsy. And there was a hospital. So if you were epileptic in the early 1900s, you were sent to this psych ward because you were possessed. And I was getting angry reading this too, because I'm thinking, wow, I would not have survived. I would have.
They used to take out pieces of your brain. That's what they used to do. I mean, that's what it's all about.
They would give you the shock therapy.
All these pictures.
Can you imagine? Like, that's so barbaric today.
I mean, we're about to take our first break within the next 2 minutes. So let me summarize this beginning segment of the show. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you out there not understanding some of the technical terms, especially the medications, you have to understand that even to this day, as I've already been seizure-free for 15 years, but yet continue to have ongoing side effects from partial temporal lobe seizure, it is a lifestyle condition that most people are still learning today. So while some of the questions that you may have out there are better left for all of us after the show has aired, or that while you're watching it now, you can contact us on our YouTube channel or on my email, frankrharrison1@gmail.com, and we will answer in real time any of the questions that you have. But the understanding is, as what I understand from Anne's story, is that at the period of time in which she had her first seizures, there was never any explanation, medical or otherwise, because people still didn't understand it. But the medications were driving the solution. And then what was ironic is that 20 years after that time, in the 90s, as I was saying from my own experience, there was learned to be either a post-traumatic or genetic basis for it. So the seizures themselves was not the epilepsy. It was the symptoms of something else still yet being explored. So when we return on this episode of Living with Epilepsy on Frank About Health, we're going to see how Anne Marie managed to take her confusion as a child prior to the age of 10 and her maturity post 20 years old when her seizures came back and completely revamped her condition by writing books about it to further educate everyone out there so that this no longer becomes a stigma, but understand that it is a condition that some people have to live with or miraculously recover from. So please stay tuned right here on TalkRadio.nyc and on all of our socials as we return. We'll be back in a few.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on TalkRadio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant. And on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on TalkRadio.nyc.
Are Are you on edge? Hey, we live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargman, the host of The Edge of Every Day, which airs each Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on TalkRadio.nyc. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and perspectives about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. That's The Edge of Every Day on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on TalkRadio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back. And as everyone is probably aware, I've been here for the last 5 weeks at the NYU Langone Health System talking about various things on Mental Health Awareness Month. We are at the tail end of it. It is June 1st at this point. But Jeff was kind enough to tell me that this was also Epilepsy Awareness Week. So I think as a bookend, it's only fitting that my first in my 5-week series and my fifth is all about epilepsy. That all being said, you heard in the previous segment that there are the medications that has been governing people's lives with epilepsy, whether they were an infant or whether they were in their young adult years, and so on. We've heard phenobarbital. That was the classic original solution. Then there was Dilantin. Then there was Tegretol. Then there was Depakote. Then there was Lamictal. Then there was Keppra. Then there was Xcopri. Then there was Trileptal. Then there was Topamax. Then there's everything else, including cannabis. But yet one can choose to live their lives with the considered anti-epileptic treatment, which is typically medication, but a lot of people don't ever wean off of it unless they really know the basis and the understanding of why they have the particular type of epilepsy. Here on Frank About Health, Jeff and I and Danielle Swanson have discussed the differences between post-traumatic epilepsy
and
as
those
well as
medications
genetically based.
Sorry, Frank, sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. It's just that want to be able to differentiate the fact that epilepsy itself is a neurological condition where the seizures are the symptoms. They're not the basis of being labeled an epileptic, which is why our last guest on neurodiversity, Susanna, was living with a stigma when she only had one seizure. She really was not an epileptic. So epilepsy can be a misnomer. And if it's not used by the right medical practitioner, it can really create a lot of heartache, not to mention, of course, confusion. So, and it seems as though, and this is what I'm setting this whole segment for, it seems as though you managed to master through your own inner workings of understanding that you kind of had this incubation period between your infantile seizures and the seizures post 20 years old. Can you tell me that moment where the light hit you and said, I know how to deal with this. This is how I'm going to manage my life with epilepsy, and I'm going to write about it. Go right ahead and explain how that became your advocacy platform.
When I wrote my first book, it was just shortly after I had my surgery, which I'll get back to. And the reason I was writing about it is because I kept diaries for 18 years, which I hope never get found. So writing about how I was feeling and what I was going through after my surgery, I needed to write it down. But when I look back at it, my words were so simple, because after my surgery, I wasn't talking like I talk today. I had to think about it. I would pause all the time. But when my seizures did come back, actually I was on holidays with my mom when I had it, and I was devastated. I lost my license, which I think as a 20-year-old, that was the biggest heartbreak, was losing my license. I lost my license.
Oh yeah, people really struggle from losing their license. Yeah.
Oh,
I can relate to that.
I can see in New York it'd be okay because you can take the subway or the bus, but where I was living, you can't. Right? I was pretty remote, so it was tough for me. but you know what? I didn't care. I made it work, and I still worked. I still played soccer, and I even was in boxing until a week before my surgery. So that's how stubborn I am. And the really good part too is I was working at a doctor's office.
No, some people swear by having an outdoorsy type of lifestyle in order to get you seizure free.
Yeah, you have to. And if somebody told me I can't do it, I would go do it 10 times. And I'm still like that at my age too. I am so stubborn, but that being stubborn is what got me where I am today. So my seizures, I would have like 6 grand malls in one day, and then I wouldn't have anything for a week, and then I'd have 2, then I would have my partial. It got to a point I had no idea when I was going to have them.
Yeah, but people are still trying to figure out like cluster seizures, they how it builds up, do you know what's interesting
though? Is I have 3 boys. My first 2 boys was during my seizures. I didn't have a single seizure during my pregnancies with my boys. And they said that's the chemical change.
Do you mind sharing what medication you were on? Because a lot of pregnant women, they want to know what medication to take when they're, are having,
I never stopped taking my medication. I was on Tegretol and Topamax, and I never stopped.
Well, sometimes they say Tegretol can lead to birth defects.
Yes. Well, I was told that at 7 months pregnant with my first, and it was not my doctor. It was somebody that I was seeing because my doctor wasn't there. I was devastated when he waited till 7 months to tell me that. My son was born with zero
Yeah,
issues.
And people need to know that. That's why I mentioned that now. People need to know that.
And same with my second oldest.
And the same thing with Topamax. Topamax can lead to birth defects too.
Absolutely. And I was on it when I had Cameron, my second one, and pregnancy was fine too. So,
well, you're lucky. I think a lot of women have suffered from that. Yeah. And there's another one too. It slips my mind right now, but I think there's another medication. I don't know if it's Vicompa or one of them though.
Yeah. And you know what? It seems that you guys have a lot more meds in the States than we do here in Canada too. I have a lot of friends. You do though. It is crazy.
They say that there's going to be a shortage in the States. They say that a medication shortage.
You guys have everything.
I'd like to pause on this topic because that's part of the confusion of epilepsy between Canada and the U.S. In the U.S., it's a commodity-driven business. Yes. Actually, in order for me to get the high-quality medications, you know where I get them from? Vancouver, Canada. Mark's Marine Pharmacy.
No, I mean, people are
because that's
really
when I get the real
there might be a shortage. Yeah.
I was just in Vancouver too. But you know what? It took me one day. I was at work and I was sitting with the doctor that I was working with, and I sat down. I said, "I want a second opinion," and he goes, "For what?"
I want to see. Really, so many people, their first neurologist said they didn't have it right. They had to get a second opinion.
And no offense, mine was very old school, and he was ready to retire. And I wanted to just see someone brand spanking new, out of school, even, right? So he did. He sent me to a new neurologist who had only opened his practice for like a year, and he could not believe I had never been tested for surgery. So he right away got me in at the University of Alberta Hospital here in Edmonton.
And what type of surgery was it?
Actually, I had left selective amygdalohippocampectomy.
Okay.
That means they took out your hippocampus?
So yeah,
don't ask me to say it.
I love these words. They removed the left parohippocampal, the amygdala, and the hippocampus. So I didn't really know that until after. Like, I didn't ask what they were doing.
Did that shift your memories, your emotions?
My goodness. My kids loved that it affected my memory because they tried to get away with everything.
I know. I know that's exactly what the area of the brain where it is. Yeah.
I had to write sticky notes everywhere because the boys would say, "No, you said we could play Xbox till midnight or whatever," right? Because they were younger. But I don't know. My boys were amazing. Matthew, my oldest. He's the one who witnessed the most. Like, he's 28 now, but when he was 7, you guys know what a seizure is. I think it's a Bloody Mary in the States, a drink.
Yeah.
I had a seizure in front of Matthew on the kitchen floor, and he phoned 911 and said, my mom's having a seizure on the floor. And I'm thinking, Matt, you can't say it like that. It's a seizure, not a seizure. So that's the ongoing. We always laugh about that. He was so calm. You know, I had seizures in the worst places.
Well, you know, they say people with epilepsy can watch their favorite shows over and over because really they don't remember them.
I know. Oh, the kids loved it though. They thought it was fantastic. But you know what? It never bothered me. Like, having seizures, like, even if I was in public having one, I apologize to people because it freaked them out more than it freaked me out.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
But
well, you know, people really change their tune once they know that you have epilepsy or they see you have a seizure. They really,
but even sometimes,
the dynamics of your whole, like, you know, interactions totally change.
And then there's people who just don't know how to accept it or how to react, and they kind of just back away, which I get that too. Not everybody is.
No, I mean, and that's why it's so hard to get rid of the stigma. You know, because really people just the way they respond to people with seizures.
No, it's crazy.
Well, like what I keep saying on this show, and we're about to take our second break, but what I keep saying on this show is if you don't advocate for the illness that you have that is so confusing to people, then no one will ever learn, and nobody will be in the business of learning unless they themselves are inflicted with it. I mean, if you think about it, that's what COVID was about. But in terms of us, all three of us, having lived our lives with epilepsy or are ongoing with treatments and things like that, we're in actually the driver's seat of sort. And when we return, I would like you to explain this picture, which is you and your 2 books. All right, because obviously one of them talks about your surgery, I presume, and the other one talks about your adulthood or your seizures post-surgery and living life to the point of where you're no longer having seizures, correct?
Yes, correct.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned after these next few minutes right here on TalkRadio.nyc, on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitch.tv. Welcome again, everybody, as we come back and talk with Anne Marie O'Connor from Canada about her 2 jewels of knowledge that pretty much educate individuals in how to live a better life while living with epilepsy to the eventual resolution that she now benefits from today, which is freedom from seizure activity. We'll be back in a few.
Are you passionate about the conversation around racism? Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. TLC, host of the Dismantle Racism Show, which airs every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on TalkRadio.nyc. Join me and my amazing guests as we discuss ways to uncover, dismantle, and eradicate racism. That's Thursdays at 11 o'clock a.m. on TalkRadio.nyc.
In a post-COVID world, you may have many unanswered questions regarding your health. Are you looking to live a healthier lifestyle? Do you have a desire to learn more about mental health and enhance your quality of life? Or do you just want to participate in self-understanding and awareness? I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each Thursday, I will tackle these questions and work to enlighten you. Tune in every Thursday at 5 p.m. on TalkRadio.nyc, and I will be Frank About Health to advocate for all of us.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on TalkRadio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on TalkRadio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc, now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Okay, welcome back. Okay, and by all means, talk about your books, explain exactly what you want. All of us living with epilepsy, still with seizures, or probably having them under control, what we can learn from your experience through those books.
Okay, well, my first book, If Walls Could Talk, I actually came about writing it because I wrote a poem that I didn't know I was a poet, and it was called If Walls Could Talk. Now, this was written about a year after my brain surgery, and I was not in a happy place.
Well, that's when the best work is done.
Oh my goodness, I don't know where it came from, but I'm going to read it to you. It's only 2 minutes, and then you'll see why I wrote the book after this. So, if walls could talk. They see us from all angles, every step we take. Sleeping, talking, cleaning house, even times we ache. They catch us sneaking cookies or kissing in the dark. They help us hang our pictures and let us decorate them with art. We sometimes rough them up a bit, even color them real bright, punch holes and add new windows to make an old room a new sight. But only they could tell us the things that they have seen. A wall could write 1,000,000 books. I wonder if they dream. So as you walk around your home and gaze at your walls, remember, if a wall could talk, the fun could end for all. I don't know where it came from, but it was writing that I said, I need to share my story. I need to write about what I've been going through and how I'm feeling. So I wrote, If Walls Could Talk, Don't Let Epilepsy Control You. I did not tell a single person I was writing it. I was married at the time. I did not tell my husband. I didn't tell my parents, my brother, my kids. I waited till it was published. And everybody was
epilepsy is such a loss of control, over your lives. I mean, people, will say, people without illness will talk about that they don't have any control over your lives. But when you throw in seizures in there, really, you don't have any control. It's a loss of consciousness that could happen at any second.
Yeah, it changes everything. So I shared a lot of very personal things in here about depression, about suicide, thoughts, which I did go through, but I didn't share that until after this came out. And it was from that I got the help I needed. And I was wondering, I'm like, why am I depressed? I have never been depressed in my life. And then I finally asked my doctor and the neurologist, and they said, yeah, well, depression is a side effect. I said, why wasn't I told that? And that is my hardest thing that I have come out this whole thing with, like being seizure free, surgery, everything, is I wish I would have been told that. Because I had people think
you need to know these things. Really, I think that
it's quite possible
it's kind of
they
an
didn't
oversight.
even know.
Yeah,
it's
that's
quite
true.
Possible they didn't even know.
That's true. But then I started a support group out here where I live. It's called Parkland Aiming at Care for Epilepsy. Then I started one on Facebook, Life After Brain Surgery. And I needed that, right? I needed to talk to other people around the world and say, am I okay? Like, is this normal? And everybody's like, thank you for starting this group. This is amazing talking. And I've met a lot of people who are seizure free, but a lot that have had 3 surgeries or still on meds. And I almost feel bad to say that I'm not on meds anymore, but everyone says,
well, I know,
that.
people who share on social media, and they don't like saying cured from epilepsy. That is like against the rules, because they say, I'm still dealing with this.
Yeah, I do say it, and I stay, pretty positive about it, but I know that things can change, and I'm hoping that, the surgery I had, what they did remove, has stopped it for me forever. I'm not on meds. I had 1 aura in 20 years.
No,
and
that's amazing. It's great that you're seizure free. But when
speaking of which, you just mentioned 20 years. Did you have a number that you wanted to show?
Yeah, you had a number you wanted to show, right? Yeah.
Do.
Yeah. So. Wow, that's good. That's impressive. People love showing their number. Yeah.
When I speak at schools and I ask kids what they think this number, even when I speak at conferences, I have this number every single time. Like, obviously it's different. And I ask people what they think it represents. People will say how many seizures you have.
See, I can't do that. I have it every month. I have a bunch every month, so.
And it's funny what people come up with, though. But that is how many days, as of today, I've been seizure-free. So I'm pretty proud of these numbers when, you know, just to even share that and say, yeah, this is like amazing. I mean, I
think I might start thinking about it if I got 6 months seizure-free.
There you go. Oh, I remember almost being a year seizure-free and to get my license back, and then 3 grand malls, and I was like, oh, are you kidding me? It was like, that was the most devastating. But after I did, a few years later, when I started my support group, I asked some friends online if they would like to share their epilepsy stories. So that's when I wrote this book, Let's Talk About Epilepsy.
Yeah, and I think that's great. It's inspiring others to talk about their stories.
I love
it's a great
that.
title. Yeah.
I love, like we were talking earlier, you know, not everybody's open with it. I'm open
and really
with
that's
everything.
the only way we're going to get rid of the stigma. If people start talking about it, talk about it more. Yes.
Yes, because you get friends and family, like even back when I was not in a happy place, people would tell you, don't talk about it. You know what? You can't do that. I will talk about it even more.
I mean, I don't want to talk about it all the time because really there is then you're giving into like a victim mentality.
Yes.
Too. You got to be very careful, I think, you know, really people criticize, you know, me sometimes when I say that, but really you can get this victim mentality by talking about it too much. You know, I try to emphasize that,
But I have to say that when you turn your situation into an advocacy platform, you're already erasing the stigma because your presentation is not just yapping about it.
Oh, no.
It's actually educating about it.
Yes.
And I want to know more from not just those books, but can you explain whether what's in the United States or in Canada, what type of talks or what type of conferences you have done?
Yeah, actually, I was in New York in April speaking at a women's mental health conference. I was so excited. And prior to that, I've been in Cape Town, South Africa, Chicago, Baltimore, Phoenix.
Oh, that's great. And usually do you talk about stigma?
You know, I talk about everything. Absolutely everything. It does depend the audience. If it's at a medical conference, I will obviously talk more terminology and the surgery and that, but I speak at schools also, and kids are the best to talk in front of, especially little kids. Like I had a grade 2 boy go, how much does your brain weigh? Does your brain still hurt? Like things like that, right? And and then they want to feel it. Because I have bumps, like obviously they took half my skull off, right? And I had 50 staples in my head, and I have a picture of that, and I always say that's my good side. And people
and I think that's great for a science class. You know,
they
visit
love
a science class. Schools
kids are fantastic. And I even tell them, I said, do you know your brain has 100 billion neurons? And they're all like looking at their teachers like I'm this like scientist, right? I love it. It just, you know what? It makes me feel good. And speaking at the Epilepsy Walk in Phoenix in 2010, oh my goodness.
I was just in Phoenix for the Epilepsy Walk this year.
I love Phoenix. I love it. And the kids gravitated to me. They thought it was winter for me all the time. I said, no, it's not. I
have family in Phoenix, so I go to the Epilepsy Walk sometimes.
Yeah, no, I used to have a place in Phoenix, and I love it in Goodyear, and I loved going there. It's a quick trip from where I am, 3-hour flight straight south. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, I hear some great things about Vancouver. I'm planning to go eventually.
Oh, Vancouver is amazing. I'm one province over, but Vancouver is, it's like Toronto. But you know what? I love talking. It doesn't matter what the audience is. Even 2 years ago, I won the Significant Achievement Award for the city that I live in for my speaking. I was blown away. I was like, what? And I'm up with all these NHL hockey players and doctors. And then there's my name, and it's for sharing my story internationally. So I am super proud.
That's amazing. That's great.
As a result of your condition, you created some books. The books in itself has given you a platform to speak at conferences and schools and other things. Do you have an actual website where people can see future dates where you'll be speaking, whether it's in Canada? Okay,
Yeah,
can you share with me?
it's simple. ibeatepilepsy.com.
Awesome.
Yep.
And are
And
you already scheduled to speak over the next few weeks, for example?
not the next few weeks, but I am booked to speak in September in San Francisco. And
Very
I
nice.
had 3 invitations
great.
last week. I just have to kind of pick and choose where I want to go. So
How would you classify yourself as in terms of advocacy? That you're a patient advocate or a medical advocate, meaning you work with the medical professionals more so?
Oh, patient. It's 100% from me, how I see things. And that's like you said at the beginning, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. I'm just someone who went through what I went through, and I like to share my story. And I just, I stay positive about it. I don't look back and say, oh, I wish that didn't happen. You know what? Look what I'm doing today. Look at the people I'm helping today.
Yeah, I mean, really, you're the type of person that people are inspired by, and then they're inspired to write their stories.
And it is that, Jeff, that basically will remove stigma. When people turn the story into a whole knowledge base that has been unheard of before,
Absolutely.
It becomes, instead of a stigma, it's more of an opportunity. I mean, the reason why I'm doing the show is because I have epilepsy. So
well, yeah, I mean, there's the fear of epilepsy, and then there's the fear of the unknown, and advocates are getting epilepsy, away from that unknown. That is what's so good about it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I just stay positive. That's my main. That's it. Stay positive.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, speaking about staying positive, we're going to have to take our final break. But when we return, I would like you, Jeff, to start that segment by talking about stages of epilepsy, which I understand is your platform. And then at the same time, how you are trying to collaborate with people like Anne, as you and I have been collaborating, and other people that have been on our show. So I'd like you to talk more about that and your Instagram page and everything else right here on TalkRadio.nyc and all of our socials. So we will be back in a few.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on TalkRadio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on TalkRadio.nyc.
Are you on edge? Hey, we live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargeman, the host of The Edge of Every Day, which airs each Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on TalkRadio.nyc. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and perspectives about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. That's The Edge of Every Day on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on TalkRadio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant. And on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on TalkRadio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Okay, welcome back. So, Jeff, you and I have been at this already for the last 6 months since you appeared on the show right here at NYU in December. We talked about your book, and then we had several shows with Danielle Swanson. We talked about narcissism. We talked about alternative treatments. We talked about mental health with Susanna Price. And now here we have been speaking with Anne. And I think we've got the makings of stages of epilepsy, which you have already been doing on the side. I'd like to know more about that now and how it fits in line with what Anne has been able to achieve.
Well, my Instagram page, Stages of Epilepsy, I've been posting on it every day for a long time. I mean, I miss a day here and there, but really, I post about epilepsy topics. With a meme, with a mental health meme. Sometimes, sometimes it's about, like I said, the victim mentality. Sometimes it's about positive choices moving forward. Sometimes it's just the mental health, mental illness related or focused. But most of the time it's just about epilepsy and the daily struggles that a person to go living with epilepsy has to deal with. Sometimes it's about medication, but I don't like to talk about side effects too often because like you said, it's a touchy subject, and really you don't want someone to go off their medication. So I will list the I used to list the side effects of Topamax and stuff like that, but really then you get a lot of criticism too. And so I got to be very careful. Moving forward, we said we would do Stages of Epilepsy and have other guests and stuff. So I've reached out to other writers and stuff like that, and someone that will talk about I mentioned the term migralepsy, because you can have migraines and epilepsy, and people have talked and discussed how they might be on the same spectrum, because a lot of parents had migraines, or maybe somebody that was related to you had depression and migraines or something, and really then that their kids had seizures, but you never saw epilepsy when you looked way back in generations. So it's those are the topics that we want to discuss moving forward, because really there's a big audience for it, and they want to hear more about it. Like, why am I having epilepsy? Why did I get it? Why did I get this neurological disorder? Yeah, and really we have a lot of people that want to talk and enter the discussion. Yeah, that's Stages of Epilepsy.
But when you say stages, are you talking about stages from onset to treatment to resolution?
Well,
or are you
remember that there's different there's different parts to a seizure, and there's a prodrome, and that's the time before a seizure even starts, and then some people have an aura, some people don't, and then you have the seizure, and then you have the postictal, and really sometimes it goes like that. But with focal aware or complex partial seizures, it might not go like that. It's different for everyone, and it depends on what there's like 40 different types of seizures. So there's many different types of epilepsy. So really it's not the same for everyone. So when discussing it, you have to be very careful and say, this is what we're going to discuss, this topic, and be very specific about it.
Oh yeah, especially because everybody has a different makeup in their brain from the brain chemistry, and whether or not, like in Anne's case where she had surgery, or maybe in your case where you're taking medicines and still having seizures. So it opens up different debates as to other treatments, other solutions, other tests.
And I've tried almost everything. I've tried almost everything. Seriously. I mean, I've tried neurofeedback, kinesiology. I've tried all these meditation techniques. I've tried cannabis. I've tried all these medications. I've been on almost every anticonvulsant. But they want me to do surgery. I'm saying no way, because really I have seizures from all over my brain. I saw the map. I'm saying, you're not doing surgery on my brain. I'd be gone.
So in your case, it starts at one place and just spreads around, or there's seizures happening in different.
Yeah, it's on both temporal lobes. It's on my parietal lobe. I got it on my frontal lobe, but there's no way I'm doing surgery. Fuck that.
I call it the tremor before the earthquake. Yes. You just got to manage the tremor.
Yes. Sorry for my language, but seriously, I mean, they wanted me to do surgery. They really,
Yeah, where I was lucky. Mine was one spot, so.
Yeah, I know. So.
I wasn't gonna say no to that, but.
Yeah.
So is that what eventually stopped you from having seizures after that surgical procedure?
Yes.
Awesome.
I had 6 grand malls 2 days before the surgery, and I have not had one since.
Awesome.
That's crazy, right? Like, just I still thought I'd be on meds and I would still have petite malls or, auras, but nothing.
Interesting. In my case, I found out from my doctor here at NYU Langone that I had genetically based epilepsy. They finally put me on Lamictal in 2002. I was on it for 15 years, I think it was. I actually liked it because it had positive side effects.
Okay.
At the same time, it's a psychotropic medication. A lot of people with depression and bipolar disorder are actually prescribed Lamictal. But the thing is that after 3 months of not using it, because I actually couldn't acquire them unless I bought them in Canada, I basically found myself.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of drugs you can buy off the market in Canada, right?
I've heard that.
Yeah,
too.
but what I was about to say, what I was about to say though, is that after not taking it for 3 months, it was out of my system, and when I took it again, it didn't do well with me. I felt like I was drunk. So I stopped taking it, but ironically, I stopped having full-blown seizures. So maybe that part of me has, like in your case, Anne, has been resolved. Although I have temporal lobe partial refractory seizures, which I have when I'm conscious. So I take Keppra for that, and I still take Keppra to this day. But I no longer take Lamictal at all. So I might be a mix of the two, resolved as well as ongoing treatment. I don't know. I think the big lesson in this whole hour about managing your life with epilepsy is if you are dealing with a confusing neurological history and a disorder that still to this day is coming up with new medical innovations to understand and interpret much better, you advocate and you educate and you do all that you can to inform the community, even if you are resolved, because that's actually your gift. What you've resolved from, you can now help others. And that's essentially what I think all three of us have been doing.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, really, that's so. Yeah, you really have to manage your life every day, and like sometimes you have anxiety and other issues, and really, it's very difficult.
And you shouldn't be embarrassed or afraid to tell. Like back when I did have seizures, I let people know that I was around. That hey, you know what? At any time I could have one. Because if you don't, people freak out. Not everybody handles it the right way, right?
No, I mean, people that I didn't tell, there's been plenty of times I didn't tell people, and then really they do freak out,
Well, I've been on several executive committees and stuff, and I was on the RCMP advisory board here, and I was going into an aura during the meeting, and I got up and I left, and I went into the washroom because I knew I was going to have a seizure. They all know that I'm epileptic, and I should not be that naive, right?
A lot of people say that you should stop using the term epileptic because they say the stigma is attached to it.
Yeah, but they were wonderful.
I don't mind it, but because really they changed the language, they changed the terms you can use so many times.
I know,
but really, people don't like when you use or call somebody an epileptic. They or even say epileptic seizure.
Yeah, absolutely. My parents would have no clue of today's terms because they know it back from.
They want you to call it a person with epilepsy or person,
or a person with seizure disorder.
Can I say? Do you know what I'm really happy to hear is that they use the word disorder now, not disease.
Correct.
And that's to me, I like it better. I don't know. I just.
Yeah. No.
So tell me, Jeff. Did you say you're going to be doing another epilepsy walk soon?
Oh, yes. And that's this Saturday from 3:30 to 5:30 in Lawrenceville, New Jersey, right outside of Princeton. And that's at Rider University. I'll be there with my Dating in the Dark team. Of course, I've written my book, and so, it talks about the dating disasters with epilepsy, anxiety, and psychotic break. So, ask me for a copy if you're there at the walk. And just say hello and talk about epilepsy issues. I'm always willing to talk about epilepsy issues. So, and this is going to be in New Jersey. So a lot of people from New York, probably, people from even Connecticut and Delaware will come. So there's going to be a lot of people.
Anne Marie,
I
can
wish
people
I was
buy your
there.
books?
Yes.
Where can people buy your books, Anne Marie?
Online on Amazon.com.ca.
Okay, cool. And then I guess everyone knows that they can find me again here next week on Frank About Health. What we want to be able to do now is pretty much wrap up the show because we have a minute left before we sign off. But I just want everyone to I want to show my thanks for your understanding of my location for the last 5 weeks at NYU Langone, a #1 center in New York for mental health and neurological brain health. At the same time, we've been talking about different healthcare issues, including epilepsy. We also are going to be, hopefully Jeff and I and Danielle are going to be creating an epilepsy conference in the near future. More information will be coming out about that. And Marie, we're going to need you there at that conference.
I'll be there.
So, okay, and you can definitely be your keynote self. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for tomorrow's slate of shows on TalkRadio.nyc, which start in the morning with Philanthropy in Focus with Tommy D. Stephen Fry's Always Friday, closing out the day and closing out the week with Matthew Asbell's Intensified. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you, Jeff, again for another great epilepsy show.
Yes, and thank you, Anne Marie. You know, you were a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
And then everybody in Canada, if you want proper medication, Mark's Marine Pharmacy in Vancouver, you can get a 3-month supply for the price of 1 month in the United States without insurance. That's the disclaimer. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that all being said, we're signing off for the week. We will be back next week. For those of you on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, thank you for being part of this show. And again, you can contact me at frankrharrison1@gmail.com. And be on the lookout for all the future episodes on this show in the coming weeks. All right, take care, everybody. Signing off. All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You're listening to